that Zimmer fancies himself as great of a defensive mind that has been in the NFL over the last 10 years, and he has the numbers to back that up. And when you go up against the best quarterback and you can shut them down the way he has on a number of occasions with Rodgers, but sometimes he gets you, sometimes you get him. There is a fun element to it, especially when the playoffs are almost secured, and especially if they are, there will be more of a fun element to it. He's some of the loosest times I've ever seen Mike Zimmer are when he's going to go up against Aaron Rodgers, and when he gets nervous against David Blau or whoever. That's when you see the Zimmer that's a little more short with his answers, and he seems more stressed out because I think he's afraid of losing to Brandon Allen or something. But with Rodgers, he knows this is a battle that I'm familiar with and that I kind of love.
Do you agree with my assessment that I really go back now to when Mike was hired to replace Les? And I really think a huge part of that charge was Spielman saying, all right, privately, can't really find a QB here who can equal the QBs in this division, especially Aaron. So, Mike, what I want you to do is shut him down. Because it almost seems that the respect between Aaron and Mike and the way that Mike talks about Aaron almost seems like he acknowledges that he, at least in large part, if not solely, in large part, got this job because they identified him. Because if you recall, if you've gone back and watched games from Frazier's last years here against Rodgers and the Packers, and the football's flying by guys' ear holes and cornerbacks are falling. Seriously, it became a joke. He was so good, but more importantly, the Vikings had no answers. And I really think that they said to Mike, look, you're great with corners. You're great at defense. If anybody can help us beat the Packers, instead of trying to match them offense for offense at the time, 2014, instead of trying to just throw down and say, we're going to beat you and Rodgers 42-38, we're going to hold you to 24 points or, 14 points. So I really think that Mike was brought here largely to contain one guy.
It's actually a good idea, considering that Rodgers wasn't going anywhere and Matt Stafford wasn't going anywhere, to try and bring in someone that could even the score.
And Cutler was in Chicago at the time, and Cutler wasn't a joke.
Yeah. And right, he could put up 350 yards any given game also, and he had some really good games against the Vikings too, even the one in 2016 against Zimmer's defense. And then they invest the amount of talent to help Zimmer as well. I mean, that's another huge part of it is we look around and you see Pro Bowlers, guys who should be in the Pro Bowl, but somehow got screwed out of being in the Pro Bowl. And you combine those together, and it's made for not just a great matchup between Zimmer and Rodgers, which has kind of been how this is defined as Zimmer v. Rodgers. It's also been Harrison Smith v. Rodgers, which is a battle to watch. I promise you, if you try to keep an eye on the TV is not always super helpful for this, but if you try to keep an eye on where Harrison Smith is at any time, it's one of the most fun things to watch. Is he at the line of scrimmage? Is he dropping back? Does Rodgers know how to adjust the protection if he blitzes and all those things? That one-on-one battle between those two is fascinating. The pressure that the Vikings can create against him and so on and so forth has just been fun to watch over these years. And I have Rodgers' numbers. Rodgers since 2015, because 2014, let's not even talk about it. That's not when they had their full.
That was not his defense, really.
3-4-1 against the Vikings, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks, 94 quarterback rating, and a 7.4 yards per attempt.
He still only has 2 picks at that time, huh?
He doesn't throw the picks. But one of them was to end the game in 2016. I think it was Trey Wayans jumped up and intercepted the ball from Rodgers, but only 7.4 yards per attempt. He's been sacked 26 times in 8 games
and been hurt
by the Vikings and been very hurt once. Only completes 62% of his passes. I mean, if you compare Rodgers,
Mike's done a really good job.
All other teams, since 2015, this Vikings team has really pretty much had his number.
Mike's done a great job there. He's done. If you go back now and probably look at the charge that they gave Mike the day that they said, you're our guy, he's done a really good job. He really did come in because keep in mind too, I think that they were at their wits' end because aside from the 1 year pop-up of, oh my gosh, Brett Favre is going to play here, you couldn't find that QB. Now perhaps today you have, I don't know. But if you go back through, okay, we're going to try and draft Christian Ponder. Well, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to sign Matt Castle. That didn't work. Now we're going to bring in Josh Freeman. So eventually you did say
that really didn't
that
work.
really didn't work, and passes are still flying all over Jersey because of that. But if you look at all of those missteps and to finally have said, all right, let's get a defensive guy, and he's done a good job there. Here's my question for you. What do you expect on Monday night, though? Because the Packers don't scare me, and I don't exactly know why, but they just don't. There, they might a little bit. Here, they don't. But the change is this. Aaron is still good. He might be very good, but he's not Aaron. He's not 2012, right? 2013. That guy was incredibly special. Top 5 QB probably of all time. What do you expect, Matthew, from him now against not the safeties, but cornerbacks who are probably as weak of corners, and this is speaking to how good the corners got for Mike, probably as weak of corners that Mike has had as far as reliability since 2014.
Well, it's an interesting question because it's a team that does not have great wide receivers.
Correct.
And I was grinding a little tape last night, Judd. And there are times where Rodgers has a guy that might be open and he's going to have to make an anticipation throw. But he's like, nope, can't do that. And there are other throws. He had one against the Bears where a guy, it's a crossing route, deep crossing route. He's probably 25 yards down the field. Rodgers gets a little pressure, flicks the wrist. I think it's Geronimo Allison. Wide open. Just should be a 20, 25-yard gain. Boop, hits him in the hands, just drop.
Saw it.
And I looked this up. He's had 24 drop passes this year or something in that ballpark. I mean, he's had a lot of drop passes. If you compare that to Kirk Cousins, even though people think Stephon Diggs has dropped a lot of passes this year, I mean, the whole team hasn't really at all. For Kirk Cousins, he's had mostly people that are catching it for him. Where Rodgers, 24 drops this year, which is more than all of last year for Rodgers, with 2 games still to go.
Wow,
not great for Rodgers receivers. A lot of drops, and that's why I would say you don't really fear it that much. I mean, you fear them hitting on some big plays. But where Rodgers is really getting a lot of extra yards and extra help is from Aaron Jones and from Williams when they can drop it off to those guys and get on a quick screen or something like that. Similarly to Dalvin Cook, that's where you really worry about, all right, is Aaron Jones going to be the one who breaks this game? That's weird to talk about a Packers team where he's not maybe the most scary, dangerous person that Aaron Jones might be. But that really feels like the case to me. That if Aaron Jones has a great game, the Packers are going to be really scary. Thing is, Eric Kendricks is playing the best football of his career, and Anthony Barr has a tendency when it's one of those sort of games that every so often he's going to have a great game. Not good, but legit great Anthony Barr game-breaking game. Wouldn't be surprised if this is the one that he gets amped up to play against Rodgers again. And then you have these 2 great safeties that both could have been in the Pro Bowl, and 2 defensive ends. One of them is in the Pro Bowl. The other one could have been. It's a defense with a weakness, and the weakness is very clear, and you can attack it. I'm not sure they have the people to attack it.
Right.
I would have a lot of confidence in the Vikings defense against the Packers offense at US Bank Stadium.
Do they have it? So with Jones, do they have an advantage just going up the gut there too? Was the Seattle game an anomaly? Or was that a real weakness that can be exposed?
No, I think it was an anomaly.
Okay, because that would be the only one thing that if the Packers exploit it and the Vikings don't defend it correctly, could be a real problem.
The problem with this team does have something similar to Seattle, which is, of course, a great running back and good offensive linemen and run blocking. They could also bring in extra tight ends or extra offensive linemen like Seattle did. But Seattle kind of does that all the time, where they bring in the extra offensive linemen. And I don't think the Vikings were very well prepared to handle that. They were terrified of Russell Wilson throwing it deep. The whole strategy in that game, and it was remarkable sometimes on the TV, you couldn't even see the safeties. They were so far back. Their whole thing was, we're going to make you have these long drives. We're going to make Russell Wilson throw short passes because if he throws long passes, we're probably going to lose. And, well, they made one mistake. You threw a long pass and you lost.
Yep.
With those safeties that far back, that means Harrison Smith is no longer right up in the box, and that's where it's much easier to fill those gaps.
Doesn't that forfeit a main strength? if you're the Vikings defense.
It does, but it also opens up a major weakness. And that is why having Mike Hughes in instead of Xavier Rhodes now might even the score a little bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Harrison Smith up in the box a little bit more. Problem, though, is, and I'm sure that Mike and the old staff over there are pretty aware of this, that the top quarterback rating in the NFL when throwing deep is Kirk Cousins. Guess who's number 2? And not far behind, Aaron Rodgers.
Ooh, interesting.
Yep. And Rodgers has more.
And that's with guys dropping passes.
More deep completions and with guys dropping passes. So Rodgers has 125.7 quarterback rating when throwing deep. I'm certain they know that. And guess who's right behind them? Russell Wilson.
Sure.
So they know that that's everything to them is handoffs to Jones, play actions, deep shots from Rodgers. And even if he is washed, he's still got that accuracy down the field to make big plays, and they're going to be concerned about that. So if you're the Vikings, do you say, you know what, we're going to try to limit those and keep our safeties deep? Or do you say, we're not going to let Aaron Jones beat us, and we're going to bring Harrison Smith up into the box?
I don't know what you do right there.
You're relying a lot on Mike Hughes and Trey Waynes, who just gets a free pass, and I don't know why. Maybe because Rhodes was so bad. Trey Waynes hasn't been the least bit good this year.
Yeah,
and we've seen, but Rodgers knows that. We've seen him attack the heck out of Trey Waynes before in the past.
So pass one that he threw against the Bears last week. Perfect pass, right? Deep pass, deep shot. Great play call. Goes right through his hands. And that's where I can't decide if Aaron has truly fallen off or he's fallen off a bit and he's playing with a bunch of guys that just stink.
Yeah.
It was Williamson-like, Matthew.
Yes.
Like the ball went through him. That doesn't happen.
We're seeing with Kirk Cousins the same thing we saw with Case Keenum. Where we're like, man, has anyone dropped a pass this year? I know Diggs has dropped a couple, but when you only have had 17 drops the whole season long, and there are other quarterbacks with 25, 30, it's a huge advantage. Keenum had the same thing, and I think Diggs might have dropped one pass that whole year. Rudolph one pass.
Has Diggs dropped a deep ball this year?
One.
He's dropped medium.
There was one.
There's been some.
I think it was in Philly, actually, or again. I think it was against Philly. It was like a 30-yard pass that he could have had even another touchdown, but he couldn't get a hold of it.
Okay.
Because I remember him saying after the game that he should have had it.
That's right.
Trey Waynes this year, quarterbacks throwing at him have a 111.4 quarterback rating.
It's because Rhodes has been so bad.
Yeah,
that's why.
Really haven't paid attention to Waynes. Over his career, he has not been great, but he is having his worst year of his career.
Mike has never had corners since 2015 struggle like this.
Definitely not. I'm looking where that ranks, but it's not good. It's let's see here. Where is it? Okay, it's the 18th worst for Trey Waynes among all corners. Rhodes is second worst among all corners.
So which poison do you pick? If you're the defensive coordinator for the Vikings on Monday night.
So let me put that in a better way. Waynes, in terms of quarterback rating against, 66 out of 83. Okay. So not good. I always err on the side of stop the pass first. If the other team is going to run on you, it feels worse than it is. It feels like you're drowning, but you're not. They're getting 6 yards a carry. Okay, they got 6 yards. Okay, they got 7 yards. Okay, they got 5 yards. They didn't get 35. And if you're playing the two deep safeties, normally you can come up and stop plays before they turn into big rushing touchdowns or something like that. And against Seattle is a great example where the big play for Seattle is launching it 60 yards down the field on a pass where your safety wasn't there and Xavier Rhodes thought he was going to be. The rest of that game is a lot of short throws from Russell Wilson. And a guy drops a touchdown pass, but they stopped him in the red zone. A lot of times if teams are having to run and run and run and run, if you're going to not give up the play action pass off of that, then the running is so much less dangerous. And even though at home you'll watch the TV and go, why are we getting run over? Is our team soft? What is wrong with these guys?
Right.
But in reality, they've had to run 4, 5, 6 times to get the same yards you would on 2 or 3 passes if they're taking advantage of your corners and man-to-man coverage.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
They do eat clock. But yes, I don't know if you care that much.
You can't get it's harder to get the ball back. Yeah, it's harder to get and teams have done that to the Vikings this year.
And Seattle did a great job of that,
They've taken what the Vikings have given them, and Seattle is a great example. And guess what? Against Seattle, you're right there with a chance to beat them. And they still got that 60-yard touchdown, and you could have beat them. And
Yep.
that game might look like this game. They might try to run a lot and then hit on a few deep balls. If you don't give up the deep balls, you might win.
I am so excited to see the Vikings play a pretty